evening, cult members of Book of the Pop Culture Cult. I'm Shaw.
I'm Janice.
Welcome to our spoiler reaction, discussion, breakdown, review, blah, 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 of the Ahmed Best Show. This episode's called the Foundling. This is chapter 20 of The Mandalorian. We will get to, I have been saying his name, Beck. I don't believe I freaking lost his name in my head. We'll get to him in a minute. I'm struggling because this show is amazing. A lot of people have been pitting Andor versus Mando versus Clone Wars versus Rebels, and this one's better. This one because of this and whatever, and that conversation is fun, but when you start, this is trash because of X, Y, and Z, and that makes this one's better because of X, Y, Z, and everything else is trash because it's not this. Is you have no storytelling understanding at all. Period. End of conversation. And if you're not here for us to have a deeper conversation about what that is, that is the door right there.
It's just internet trolls.
There's some internet trollness to it too, but there's also some media illiteracy. And yes, I had to work on that word. I have not seen anybody complaining about this episode, but they complained about the last episode about being filler. And there's so much depth in that freaking episode. And then they come back and have this one. We have this pretty cool, awesome surprise of Ahmed Best showing back up as Beck. I almost had it. And they're only going to talk about that, and you're going to miss the whole thing of what this episode is. And so let's get into it. It's called The Foundling.
Yes. There are many, many foundlings.
God, I want to kiss you openly on the mouth right now. Who's the Foundling? Everybody's like, oh, this is episode's about Grogu. And yes, Grogu has some very important things that comes, remembrances and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Is it Ragnar? Is it him being found and by a caring father that is Paz Vizsla, and how he's been kind of very anti-Bo, anti-Din.
Yeah.
Well, anti-Din from Jump, but...
Hold on. Let's talk about burying the lead that Paz Vizsla has a kid. And the first thing I said was, did they take their helmets off?
I said, I need to show you this film called Excalibur. It's very interesting to see that they've been laying out this idea of what it means to be a foundling, and then you have Bo-Katan,
right? Is she the foundling?
Who is also kind of lost. She's lost everybody. She's an orphan. She's homeless. She's been the foundling. Is it the raptors that at the end, the raptor babies?
Right.
It's
right.
It's just been so much fun to kind of go through this episode and kind of the internet reaction to it. I am looking up his name because it's going to make me crazy the whole freaking day. But this episode spends a lot of time talking about what the actual meaning of a foundling, meaning of family, meaning of all of that, and looking at it from very different points of views. And it's interesting for the 4th episode this season that this is where they're at. This is the story that they're deciding to tell right now.
Right.
Because it feels like we're going to get a moment where the meaning of being a Mandalorian and the meaning of being a foundling are going to butt heads with each other. You ever watched a movie and thought, like, this is just visually amazing, and I just love the way it looks, and the colors are amazing? Well, our friends over at Movie Palette have come up with these great pieces of art that you could put up on your wall to show your love of movies without really necessarily being overly dramatic about it. Think of a movie barcode kind of thing, where you can look at the colors and know what the movie is, but it's very, very subtle. If you know us, we are into Tron Legacy. The music and the lights and the color itself is just amazing. Just to give you an idea of what they have, go to moviepalette.com, find your own personal favorite movie, your movie color palette, and have it hang on your wall. At checkout, put in Pop Culture 15 to get 15% off. Thank you, Movie Palette, for sponsoring this video. Link is in the description down below. And don't forget, use Pop Culture 15 at checkout to get 15% off your order. And how one is going to, we're doing all of this stuff so that the next generation can do it for their next generation to teach and move on and whatever. But you have someone like Bo-Katan who has been through the fires of life, but is now in a position of being a foundling again because she's lost, like we said, everything else.
Right.
And she keeps going to, she went in this episode to the armorer for some parental guidance. And the armorer kind of shot her down at the end when she was talking about the mythosaur and actually seeing it. And the armorer's kind of like doing the whole like, hey, when you're following the religion, you'll see lots of cool things. And Bo's like, no, actually saw it. She's like, this conversation's over.
Yeah,
you know,
this is the way.
Yeah, and it kind of makes it interesting that it's that they keep talking about this idea of what it means, not necessarily not yes, what it means to be a Mandalorian, but everything that's encompassing the idea of being part of something bigger than yourself. Color it back. I didn't have to look it up. It just came to me. I knew it'd come to me.
Because everything in that article was
Not that.
Jar Jar Binks, Jar Jar Binks,
yeah.
Jar Jar Binks. Well, I would like to point out that every single one of the foundlings was maybe not there of their own volition.
I yes, I've had the
Vizsla's
same exact thought.
Kid is not a foundling. If his dad is there, he's not a foundling.
Right.
So he's just there because, whatever. We didn't get the backstory. Mom's dead, whatever, and so he took him. And Grogu, like, it was awesome. The dart shootout scene, was awesome, but it was also icky. I felt really uncomfortable that Jin was making him do this thing, and he would, and Bo's like, "Don't worry, Dad's just, proud of you." Blah blah blah. My dad did the same thing, but it's not like, and Grogu can't talk, so he can't say, "I don't want to do this. This isn't my thing." And like you said, Bo-Katan was just kind of, she's like, okay, I have a potential family again, and trying to kind of connect or whatever, and the armorer just kind of, yada yada her. This is the way to her.
Yeah.
And then the raptor babies, they killed their mom.
Yeah.
So, that's, I mean, as soon as she like went into the water, and then the whatever. Can we not live on a planet where everything is trying to kill you? Just find another planet.
Everybody I've listened to today is like, that was one of the first things. Like, you picked a dinosaur planet?
Right.
That's like Powell, by the way. But it's like...
So, and
I'm never going that lake, ever.
No.
Ever.
No.
Ever.
The giant crocodile thing, whatever, ate her. And the first thing popped in my head is, I'm like, you just killed those 3 babies. Okay, they didn't. They brought them back. But, you're... Like, so in was it the first season or whatever, where Din is witnessing, is it the Empire that kills his family,
Uh,
his mom and dad.
it's the Separatist.
Okay,
The droid. It's a droid armor. It's the droid armor.
right,
Yeah.
that kill his mom and dad, and the Mandalorians are there to rescue him, and it's like, but in this instance, you're the separatists, and
I, you're,
it's all very it was kind of icky. The whole thing was kind of icky.
I've been on, and she's been kind of playing along with me on this track that the armorer is a cult leader, and that part of the reason why the Mandalorians have been torn apart is because of this, you know, Bo's sister Satine wanted them to turn over a new leaf, and factions broke apart. Instead of fighting together, they got picked apart, picked away from each other, and now someone like the Armorer or David from The Last of Us
Right.
is using this opportunity to build their own little following
Yeah.
of their version of what their religion is.
Yeah.
And so it seemed very interesting to me. I keep using interesting, but it's the only thing that keeps coming to my mind. Beck, Keller and Beck. The episode starts with them with a training montage, and now instead of 20 people there's like 75 or 100 people there.
Right, and they're all learning how to fight.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what I'm saying. Like,
it's just
this
weird.
whole episode just made me feel uncomfortable the entire time. Like, Din leaves Grogu with the armor, and I'm like, I am uncomfortable. I said this out loud. I said I am uncomfortable with him leaving him with her. Now, nothing happened, but just like the whole episode just made me uncomfortable. And why is Paz Vizsla so easily letting Bo-Katan just take over?
And there's some legitimacy to that question, but I think that one particularly is when the jetpacks fail because they run out of gas.
Yeah,
and she's the one who's smart enough to get in the jet in her ship and take after. Like she's the first one who's shown up with an idea of doing something different than what they've done in the past.
Yeah.
With this. Because he said every time this happens, we run out of gas.
Right.
Every time you're still sitting on this beach. Every time. And so I think by default of the fatherly thing to do, I've done everything that I know to do. There's somebody else here with a new idea. She's got an idea. I'll let her take a lead. That one I can at least understand.
That might, because he didn't say until after that it was his son.
Yeah.
So I could get that he kind of buried his animosity to everyone.
Yeah.
For this instance, to go save his son.
There's also throughout the training montage, the Armorer and Paz are standing next to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's definitely a I wouldn't say closer kinship, but that's not quite.
Well, it was just the two of them.
It was just the two of them for a long time.
Yeah. So I mean,
I'm sure they've had long conversations of, when I get my army together, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And it was just a kind, not weird, but just
unsettling.
An unsettling episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes
in a good way, though. In a good way.
In a good way. But it makes you wonder if they're setting Bo-Katan up to be a fall guy against the armor. Like, are the two of them gonna butt heads? Because Bo-Katan, they did the rest of the Mandalorians start to kind of look up to her because she has new ideas? And, does she come back and say, why don't we get off this planet? And I have a ship and we can, and Din's got a ship. And I mean, his is he still has a ship, right?
Yeah, he's got that M1
hot rod. I was trying to remember if it got blown up in the last episode or not. You can only put one other person in it, but they can fly someplace and get a transport and move everybody, so is that going to be where this goes?
They have done some heavy lifting with the idea of, I have questions about the motives for particularly everyone outside of Din.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, he's got some
His
questionable.
motivations the entire time have been very clear. They're wrong. I,
Well,
I
yes,
think
okay,
they're
that's fair.
wrong,
That is fair.
but
He is
his has been
single-minded.
very single minded. I need to make myself whole again, and by making myself whole again, I could be back with my people, my coven, my covert.
Co-
Sorry,
co-
coven is a different thing.
covert,
Covert.
cohort, whatever. It's like I would use a different c word there.
Right, right.
Cult.
My cult. But now that he's there, and now he has his own ward to take care of, his own child to take care
Yeah.
of, he wants to teach that child what this way of life is, because this child chose to be with Din instead of
Right.
choosing to be with Luke and following that
But he
path.
chose to be with Dick, not with
Right.
crazy armor cult woman. So, I mean, well, it's speculation, but I wonder if because he's been kind of sort of talking, learning to talk, saying things that kind of sort of sound like Pelly. But uh, I wonder if Din's gonna push him to the point where he says no. Like that's his first word is no.
Yeah. Yeah. They were talking about it earlier on Force Center that we all have been like, what's his first word's gonna be and everything. Now there's stakes to
Yeah,
what that first word would be.
yeah.
Because in the last episode, he kind of tried to say this is the
This is the
way.
way. Yeah,
But he was reluctant. He has been, you forget that Grogu's 54, 55, whatever.
yeah,
And so he has been through trauma.
yeah.
He has been through some major bad, bad trouble. But he's also too emotionally. And so, like, so they were talking about, like, is he not speaking or is not able to speak because the trauma has been too much that he just refuses to speak, like the little kid from Scrooged,
Yeah,
who refuses to speak
yeah,
after watching his dad
yeah, yeah.
die. But his what he says eventually is going to have weight to it now, because there could be a a point of I don't want to say this, and I don't want to show the universe, the galaxy, who I really am, because I've been kidnapped 6 times,
Right, right.
and I don't. So that's when he was when Din was like, "No, you can do this," like the sports dad, like
Yeah.
the little kid wants to be a piano player, and Dad's like, "No, you're gonna play baseball." And Din's a good dad. I think he's going to figure out that he's going to take him piano classes instead of, like, baseball practice. But
Maybe because this is really, really Din's passion.
this is Din's passion. This is
So
Din's passion. But he was willing to break. I'm going to get back to it. I swear. Um, he was willing to break his oath for this child
yeah,
of
that's true.
his.
Yeah,
So he's going to come back around. But Grogu is so not wanting to show his abilities as a Jedi to anyone that he doesn't feel that he can trust.
yeah,
And specifically, he can trust Din, and specifically, he can trust Pelly, and specifically, he's working on Bo.
yeah.
But there's 100 freaking Mandos with no
Right,
face.
right. He has no idea who these people
Who these
are.
people are, and who he can trust,
Yeah,
and stuff. And
yeah,
so it's just really interesting, like what. That's why I said this episode, outside of the Caloran Beck, Ahmed Best stuff, besides that, there's so much in this episode where
yeah,
you're like, there's we've been talking about the cult, we've been talking about Bo-Katan's story arc of being a straight out killer, part of the reason her sister dies. The remnants of the group that she's part of is now she's part of that group again. Like her whole story arc. This was not the Mandalorian is no longer about Din Djarin. It's about Bo-Katan, and Din's the secondary character, in my opinion, as we sit right now in episode 4 of this season.
right. For this season.
This season.
Yeah,
Um. The arm. Let's talk about the armor a little bit more for a second, because I had a moment today during my first watching. where I started to pull back on the idea of her being a cult leader. And then I kind of thought about that last scene where Bo is looking for some parental guidance from someone. And that parental guidance that she has right now is the armorer, the matriarchal
Yeah.
person who makes the
Yep.
armor. So of course she's going to be like
Yep.
the soothsayer of the group. Um, and when she does try to go to her, she shuts her down, and that's when I was like, no, she's using she's manipulating everything that Den is doing, that it's saying what she all her conversation with Grogu, her conversation with Bo, and like that whole process.
Yeah.
She's manipulating everything, every little corner of every conversation in a way that's making it's. We've talked about her gaslighting Dan in the past. This was not gaslighting. This was not like she didn't manipulate Bo into saying something. Bo went to her on her own
Yeah.
with this trusted question, and the armorer did not um recoil back from it. She used it as a way to reinforce her religious beliefs onto someone who's still an outsider to the group.
Right.
And then when Bo really pressed her, she cut the conversation short. And that's cult leader mentality.
Yeah. And all good cult leaders are charismatic,
Yep.
right? They otherwise people wouldn't join.
You're
I
just a
mean,
weirdo who says weird things.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there have been very smart people who have followed bad people,
Hmm.
cultish people, um, who didn't maybe see it at the time when they were in it, and this is the same thing.
Hmm.
You're like it makes you question maybe they are a good person, and then there'll be those little from the outside those little things where you're like, oh, that was
Yeah.
interesting. Um, but yeah, she's
We as the audience are seeing it. Den and Bo. I think Bo. I I don't know where she's at because without the helmet off, it's hard to get like a proper
right, which I think is kind of the point.
kind of the point right now. But it just there it's really hard to kind of figure out what Bo's mindset is because she's already struggling with everything else that's going on with her
Right.
or whatever. But when they continue to, we as the audience, they kind of they continue to give us these yellow flags. I wouldn't even call them red flags, like
Yeah.
yellow flags, where
Yeah.
we're like, "Hey, wait a minute,"
Yeah.
and nobody in the universe, as of right now, seems to be picking up on it.
I think Grogu is. I think that's some of what that whole flashback scene. He was very upset, and it's not like what she was doing specifically. You're like, why would that necessarily trigger him to have that flashback? But he was like, his face was super expressive, and he was
Best
very
acting by a puppet ever.
yeah. And so I feel like he was the force was in him, showing him who she really is.
Right.
She's a bad person. Not on your side, which triggered the flash to the last time he was in that situation. Because I always thought, maybe this isn't true, but I always kind of thought that once he got rescued or whatever, when Din found him, he's in that pod, like shoved off in a corner with a bunch of stuff on top of it.
Yeah.
He's been there since.
They will explain that. They will explain that
So
at some
that
point
would
in time.
be a good period of time,
Right.
which would also explain why he can't talk yet, because he's just been in like stasis or I don't know.
They're talking about someone in stasis and Jedi Survivor, which is going to be what part of that story is going to be, is
Yeah.
someone stuck in stasis. Uh, I hadn't picked it out, but again, Force Center pointed it out today that um, Din had the same exact reaction in episode 3 and chapter 3 when he gets a whole new set of armor and he watches the armorer make armor in front of him and he does his own flashback of how he got
That's
um
true. Yeah.
so it almost feels like it's part of the armorer's, not the armorer, but the armoring process of their religion of
Yeah. It's like this religious epitome or
epiphany.
epiphany. There you go.
Epiphany.
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 Uh,
Kellerman back.
like a spiritual
Yeah.
thing that happens
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
the process, but
Yeah.
it didn't really happen to Bo when she was doing. I mean, she sat there quietly.
Not because she's still coming to terms with what she thinks she saw, which is why I think she asks the armorer about the mythosaur and
Yeah.
actually seeing a real one.
Yeah.
I would have been totally 1,000% losing my goddamn mind if they had a flashback to the Clone Wars and her in Death Watch.
Yeah.
And her deciding to walk away from Death Watch or her watching her sister die.
Yeah.
Like,
but that's a whole storyline
that's going to be a whole episode. For those of us who know, who've watched Rebels, who've watched Clone Wars, who've been with Bo the entire time and know her arc, when she's struggling to get off the couch, we are heartbroken for who this person is. And now to sit there and watch her fall for some, like, feels like she's falling for the same tropes again. It's instead of our heart aching, our heart breaks, and we're gonna get mad at her.
Yeah.
And I think because she's gone through it before, she's gonna start seeing signs.
Maybe.
And I think after this episode, I keep projecting that she's gonna get it figured out.
Please figure it out.
Okay, I'm at best. So Kelleran Beck, the character of Jedi Knight Kelleran Beck, Jedi Master, is a character that was created for a Jedi Temple challenge. That's what it was called, which was a in-universe reality for us show for 10 to 12-year-olds to go through Jedi training. And so the kids were actually doing like challenges and learning life lessons and stuff like that. And it was kind of, American Ninja Warrior and like teaching like right from wrong and all that stuff for 10 to 12-year-olds. But it was set within the Star Wars universe. It wasn't necessarily canon. It wasn't necessarily not canon. And Kelleran Beck was created by the show to bring Ahmed Best to be the host. And Ahmed said, "Hey, I want to do this character. I have a backstory for him. He's cousins with the character I played in Attack of the Clones, who's at the bar, who's like Ahmed Beck." And they said, "Yeah, let's go with it." And he's wanted to, and they did one season. It came out during the pandemic on YouTube. They were going to do more episodes, and then everything changed, right? And so when we were all talking for the last 3 years about who saved Grogu during Order 66, a list of names came out.
Right.
Quinlan Voss, Luke Skywalker. It wasn't Luke Skywalker. Ahsoka wasn't Ahsoka. Barriss Offee. It wasn't Barriss Offee. She was in jail. Like it was like all these names were coming out, and only a few people have come out today and said, "Here's the receipts of me saying Kelleran Beck." And it was more of a, well, there's this one character over here, but they'll never do that, even though we love Ahmed. It was a show that doesn't really count, but it kind of counts. And we're not really sure when it's set. Is it the High Republic era? Is it the Clone War? Like it was, so like nobody was like, this is the character is going to do it. So when the doors open and it's Ahmed Best in a freaking Jedi robe, yes. I was in my truck watching it on my phone, and if I could have, I would have stood up and like started cheering, like running around the truck. Um, but it has other implications for the story of Star Wars because his character is, um, like Yoda, when he became a master. Instead of going around the galaxy and learning how to use the Force even deeper, coming closer to the ideas of a pure Jedi Knight and all this other stuff, he stayed and wanted to train younglings. And so the fact that it was him and that he was there to save as many younglings as he could, and the only one he could save was Grogu, um, means that there was something in place just in case something happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, you get the impression that he was now. Okay, there could be things that have happened. Anakin did kill the younglings, um,
In that one room.
in all the younglings in that room, but like there were a lot of Jedi's protecting Grogu in that hallway,
Yeah,
and then
there's at
they
least
had
four.
that whole thing set up when um, Beck and Grogu get to the landing pad. There's a ship; it's already fueled
Fueled
up.
up.
There's
There's
a crew
yep.
that fight for them to be able to leave. So, I mean, you could say that he was just trying to get as many of them as possible, and Grogu was because there was a lot of people involved, and he was just the only one that um, they could get. But it feels a little weird. Like, why weren't you waiting for more, looking for more? Why was it just like, nope, this we got our guy and we're going?
Yeah, yeah. It's it puts more weight and the importance of who Grogu is to the overall story.
Potentially, yeah,
Potentially because they made a point of like the speeder bike that he gets away with would have only fit the prim.
yeah,
And so we could be as an audience projecting on what we're seeing,
right,
but there's also that conversation of if if Kellen Beck was so dedicated to the younglings and he had concerns about something that could happen, he put things in place to save as many younglings as he could,
yeah,
and he only could save one.
yep,
So I'm going to save the world, and my world is this one person.
right.
And so that idea is just both heartbreaking but also heartwarming that he was able to do it. Now, there's a whole conversation to be had about what ship he gets into, and that's the I think it's an H1 Naboo spaceship. It's a Naboo ship. On my best is playing a Jedi Knight on a Naboo ship. Is he going to Naboo and he's gonna hide Grogu with the Gungans? Because the guys, the security guys there are the Senate guards,
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that from
and
there.
Senate and Jar Jar Binks is a senator for the Gungans
Right,
from Naboo.
right.
So there's a conversation in there to be had of is that where that's going?
Or do they keep him with? I mean, keeping him with the Gungans is a little problematic because he can't hold his breath.
There's those big oxygen bubbles.
Yeah, this seems a little. But storing him on Naboo itself with the, I mean, Padme's not going to be the senator for long, but
Well, Padme's in the process of dying
right. Well,
when they get.
she's got to go to
Yeah, she's probably on
Mustafar
Mustafar now
and yeah, yeah,
with all
yes,
that
and
going
then
on. Yeah,
have the babies and all that. But in this time, she's about to. But then somebody else takes over.
actually, no, she's still on Coruscant when this is all going on.
Yeah, because she says you killed the younglings,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
but within the next
couple of days.
couple of
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
So, but they could take him to Naboo to whoever the new senator is going to be, and they could.
It could be Sabe. It could be the Handmaidens. It could be. I mean, you're opening up a whole world of.
And you don't know what happens between her and Ben getting on the ship and leaving Mustafar, and then her suddenly in labor.
Right.
Like there's no specification as to the timing
Right.
between, and they could,
It's
and Star Wars is known for going back and filling in
yep.
gaps and answering
Yep.
questions you didn't know you had. So I mean, it could be weeks later. She could have
been in a coma the whole time, and then wakes up and starts because she's yeah.
she could have set stuff up
Yeah.
before all that happened.
The comics are being very interesting right now with the Darth Vader comic because Vader went on a quest to find Padme's tomb, and when he on Naboo, and when he got there, the handmaidens were there, and um, and they tried to defend the tomb from Vader, and Vader is Vader, and he didn't kill them though. He just kind of pushed him away and got him away, and through that process, Sabe has decided to work with Vader to try to find out what happened. And so Sabe is kind of working side by side with Vader. So it's very interesting that this Sabe was kind of like the lead of the handmaidens. Like she was the one that Padme switched out with
yeah.
with the most.
Yeah.
But it's just
Keira
very
Knightley.
Yes. Um, uh, but it's very interesting, like that story arc is going on, with this idea now that we've got it's all supposed to be connected, right? And so
Yeah.
it'd be interesting if they continue on with that story. Now, I want um, I went back to uh, from start of the Kenobi series, and they introduced the path. That's the next show I want. We're gonna get Skeleton Crew. We're gonna get Acolyte. We're gonna get Ahsoka. That's all done, or at least being worked on right now. But then I want the path. I want this idea of hiding force sensitive people in the Empire and having them be on the run and be on the move and everything else.
Yeah, the Harriet Tubman kind of
story. Yeah, the Underground Railroad, and you can have Kellerman Beck be part of the show and have Ahmed be on this show.
Yeah,
and that would be such a redemption for how the audience treated him and everything that he went through, and to be able to come back and be this beacon of hope that you can be a good person in this world, even though that there's shit going on around you everywhere.
Yeah.
In this world of Star Wars and in the world of the real world. And I've written 5 episodes in my head today about what this show could be.
Wait a minute.
Dave. God. Dave. But I also want to talk about Ahmed. Kind of. There's IGN was the one I saw first today, but I saw some others. The redemption of Ahmed Best. You know what? I'm gonna curse. So, YouTube, I'm sorry. You fuckers have missed the whole goddamn point. He ran so that Andy Serkis could crawl, and he is a great actor who got flamed for playing a character. And people didn't like that character, and so people flamed him for it. He just played a character and tried to do something that was revolutionary at the time. And the things that he did as that character, you may not like the poop joke, you may not like him with his speech pattern or whatever.
But that wasn't his fault. That was the direction.
That was the direction that George wanted to go in. Yeah. I don't particularly think it's a racist thing. I think it was just a dialect thing. But if you want to have the racist conversation, that's fine. It was a black man doing it, and a very socially aware black man 25 years ago. So don't sit here and tell me that he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
And instead of not liking the character and say, hey, I don't like this character and I don't like what they did with it, instead of that, you made this man's life terrible, where he almost threw himself off a bridge. And now he has a chance to come back around and be a good person and learn from that attempt and try to teach others. And now Lucasfilm, Star Wars, Disney's like, you need to come back in the fold and be part of our family. We're sorry for that this happened to you, but let's help you. That's not Ahmed's redemption arc. That's us as an audience's redemption arc.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's us sitting there.
Yeah. He's already been there. He's already redeemed himself, and that's all that matters.
Yep. This is not his. This is his comeback story. We can have that conversation. This is the Amada sauce. The best of sauce. The best of sauce is not even any better. I'm okay with that conversation, but this is not a redemption arc for On My Best. That is a complete and utter mistruthitude. Like, I'm just going to do all the metaphors from all the different shows. He has handled himself above and beyond 90% of the trolls on the internet. And I put it that way because it's not Star Wars fans. Those people who went after him are not Star Wars fans, period. Explanation point, ellipsis, ellipsis, ellipsis.
The little tilde and the umlaut.
And the umlauts and all that. Those people are not Star Wars fans. Star Wars fans may have sat there and said, hey, you know what? I don't like this character. And I don't like what they did with this character. And I have some problems with maybe the racial overtones that are with it. That's the character. We think that the performance he did was great.
Yeah.
And so I am so over the moon. Not that we can see the moon. It's raining here again. I'm just over the moon that he is able to be reintroduced into the Lucasfilm family, the Star Wars family, the Star Wars fandom, with this character who was honestly like, hey, we've got this thing. Do you want to do it? And he wrote a whole backstory for it. And now, if I have my wish, he's going to have a much bigger role going forward. And people, 10-year-olds who watch that show, their first Star Wars is going to be Caloran Beck. And the lessons that he taught in that show are going to be what they learn and they take with them. And now they turn around and they watch Mandalorian at 14 with their parents, and they go, hey, I watched that guy in a game show.
Yeah.
And it's just, I love it. I love it so much. And I can't, I could spend an hour talking about just the redemption arc.
You almost have.
I almost have. This episode was 28 minutes or so, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, there's so much in this episode. Because if you just take out the Keller and Beck part and just do the Mandalorian stuff, there's so much there.
Yeah.
And the covert and all this stuff and Bo-Katan, blah, 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 blah. Oh, by the way, here's this flashback that means so much to Grogu and the story and the Clone Wars and blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, it's Ahmed Best. And so it's just I've been keeping it all inside all day. I'm sure we missed something. Let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments down below. Please be nice. That is an absolute requirement around here. And if you want to talk some smack, I have the band hammer, and that's the actual door. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, follow us on all social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, this is the way.